Welcome to the WanderLearn Show. I'm your host, Tapon. In this episode, I have Brad, Graff, and Sam Sliman, who I interviewed several months ago in the podcast. You can see the show notes for the links to that previous episode where we talked about the Drakensberg Traverse. They were asking me a bunch of questions about how to prepare for it, and they started debating it. We talked about safety issues and everything like that. Well, here I have them back now that they've done it. They did 5 days on the Drakensberg Traverse in South Africa, and they went through hell. And this podcast is all about that. So you'll definitely want to enjoy it. And you'll also want to go to the YouTube video where they show a lot of the pictures of their adventure. So you'll find that in the link as well. And also my most extreme backpacking adventure, which is in the Julian Alps. So tune in, enjoy this 17-minute episode with Brad Graff and Sam Sliman. 5 wet days on the Drakensberg Traverse. Brad, start us off. Tell us what the hell happened. I don't know the details, by the way, so I'm excited to hear everything. Everything I'm going to hear is firsthand knowledge. I just know that you did encounter a few troubles.
We had a few troubles. It was, so we had 3 people join us this time. This is our ninth Mountain Man adventure. We thought this was going to be hard, but reasonable. You know, kind of on paper, it was 45 miles, less than 10 miles a day, some elevation. We had a GPX track. We're going to be fine.
Hold on. Before you dive right in, Sam, can you give a quick overview of the Drakensberg Traverse and what you did? You did, like, what's the section? And then I'll go back to Brad.
Yeah, so we
because some people don't even know the Drakensberg is in South Africa, for example.
Yeah, and it's really a crime that more people don't know about the Drakensberg because it is really incredible. And that's, the first takeaway is that the location is amazing. And as far as a great multi-day backpacking trip, the whole Drakensberg Traverse is something like 200 kilometers, right? I think, Francis, you've done it, or at least a large portion of it.
I did the whole thing. Yeah, 205 kilometers.
Yeah.
Right.
So we did, I think, what's classically known as the Northern Drakensberg Traverse, which is the first, call it 45 to 50 miles, starting at the Sentinel Car Park and ending at the Cathedral Peak Hotel.
Got it. Let's go back to Brad now.
I think the big fly in our ointment this time was the weather. And, I remember I joined a Drakensberg Facebook group 6 months ago, and early September, so about 2 months ago, I saw a picture of somebody that was out there and there's some snow on the ground. And I WhatsApped the guy saying, ha, 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 there's some snow on the ground. Not expecting we're going to have any snow in mid-October in the Drakensberg. So, but anyway.
There was snow. There was snow, and there was rain, and there was sleet.
We started getting rain on day 2. So it was for us, it was 5 days, 4 nights. We started getting rained on midday on day 2, and it did not let up until the night of day 4. And what was problematic on this is we had 3 guys. This is their first time really doing backpacking. And even for Sam and I, we've hiked in the rain. We've hiked a lot in the rain.
Yeah.
But we've never had to set up and take down tents in the rain multi-day where they don't dry out. So what we found out, one day doesn't hurt you. But when you get into the second day, you're crawling into your wet tent. I have pictures. I have water because it's not exactly level. Water is pooling in my tent inside, like there's an inch of water, in the back corner. It's just crazy. And it drops down to freezing at night. So fortunately, we staved off hypothermia. So it wasn't like we were going to die, but it was really uncomfortable.
Did you have down sleeping bags or synthetic?
Down.
Yeah. So and they got wet, and then you're really fucked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So they weren't soaked. This isn't our first rodeo, so we were pretty careful about keeping the important stuff dry. we had to amongst the group and five of us, we sort of had to share some clothes and things because others got all of or most of their clothes wet. And like Brad's saying, even during the day, there was some 30-degree temperatures, mid 30s, high 30s. At night, of course, it was freezing, probably into the high 20s for a night or two. And
Yeah, and
so,
in my
you
opinion,
know,
by the way, the worst weather you can possibly have is right around freezing temperatures and rain. That's like the
exactly,
worst possible weather. And if
exactly,
you get that sustained, you mentioned Brad about 2 days is about the. I would say more like 3 days is where I find like where things just start to collapse, where all of a sudden nothing dries out. But whatever you call it,
yeah.
2 days, 3 days. But the point is that when it's just relentless, nonstop, and there's no periods to dry out, it's really fucking terrible and it's really
Well,
hard. It's psychologically, it's challenging. Go ahead, Sam.
yeah, what was it? 15 hours we spent in our tent that one day, Brad,
Yeah.
in our tents. It's like,
Yeah.
you lay there for 15 hours and you get some good sleep, but it's like you didn't come out
You were
there.
laying there because the weather was just torrential
Yeah,
outside and
I
you just
mean,
didn't want to get out. And so
well,
you
and
were
it was
just
night.
making,
We got
okay.
into camp early. It was raining, so everybody kind of ate their meals inside their own tents. And then we, slept through the night. But then in the morning, it's raining, still raining, and we kind of had to wait for a break to take our tents down.
Okay, so Brad, one of the key concerns you had back when we had our discussion in the podcast before was safety issues regarding, potential,
Mm.
robberies and things like that. Tell me, did you have any incidents, Brad?
So short answer is nothing happened, but the one we were concerned about snakes, and there was like four adders there, and Jamie heard a snake 3 hours into the track, just to the right of the trail. So we kind of scurried by. We never saw it, but we could hear it. So there was one snake, but no problems with snakes. Second, we were worried about, I guess, call it the local herdsman. We just heard some things just to be careful of. We After the first 2 hours of the hike, we didn't see anybody at all for 5 days until the last day. We saw Lesotho herdsman, and he kind of came up to us, and we gave him some cigarettes because apparently that's what one gives the herdsman, because that's so he's like, so anyway, but there was no problem. Seemed like a nice guy. So, uh, so we know this. So safety wise, and then like the trail and the conditions, there were some like sketchy parts, but nothing too much.
Yeah, so
So
basically,
it was
the weather actually maybe potentially improved your safety in the sense of at least being assaulted, which is one of the issues that we were talking about potentially happening. I was saying it's a
Mm.
1% chance. It's really low probability, but
yeah.
there's that chance. It's worse than other trails in America as far as safety reasons, but it's still a pretty safe place. So probably all the thieves stayed home while you were getting rained
Yeah,
on.
that's probably
The
true.
smart ones.
That's probably true, and I would expect that there weren't many other hikers. There were on the first day because you start at the car park, and then there's a fairly common trek or day trip or an overnight trip. People will take out to the is it Tagula Falls or Tugela Falls? Um, People will go camp there, and there was a group camping there the first night. We went about a quarter or a half mile south of there at a great, beautiful campsite, and it was a really nice day and a really nice night. Um, but then we didn't see anything else after
Tell,
that.
yeah, tell me, Brad, about the weather visibility. So sometimes it can rain, but you actually have okay visibility, and sometimes it's just foggy. How was it for you guys? A little bit of everything?
Oh, it varied. You know, the worst of it was on, I think it was day three, Sam, if I remember correctly, where that's when we had the sleet and the snow,
Yeah,
and it was pretty right. Okay, it was really low visibility, so you could see 20, 30 yards, but you didn't have a sense of any of your surrounding. You had no landmarks, and so which brings us to probably one of the harder parts of this thing was a bunch of it, there's no marked trails. I mean, I know you know that, but we were expecting, I guess, to believe that there would be more kind of use trails that would be pretty easy to follow. And it turns out that on a couple of the days or for a couple of stretches, there were some like single track things that you could go on. But some of it was you're just been in a wide open, the escarpment, and it's just grasses and whatever. There's nothing there.
Mhm.
And we had the GPX thing on our phone, so you can kind of follow and say, hey, I'm getting off the trail, like go left, go right. But you're just kind of blazing a trail through it. And when you're always checking your phone, one of the things I figured out was you can't have your gloves on. So for 2 days, I couldn't wear gloves because I was checking my phone every 10 minutes to make sure we were on the track. So that was a little uncomfortable, but it was really weird. We've never been on a trail where you have to kind of figure out where you're going.
Yeah, it is a bit of that for sure. I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, there are gloves, by the way, that allow you to touch things. They're specially made that they have sensors on the thumb and on the index fingers so that you can leave the gloves on, it keeps you warm, and you can actually use your electronic devices, the touchscreens. FY, in case you ever think about buying those kind of gloves. Not that they're not that expensive either. Sam, the surprises, what totally surprised you about the trail?
The lack of a trail, as Brad just talked about, was an eye opener. When you can see landmarks, it's you have visibility. Then you can say, okay, I know I need to go to the right end of this ridge, so I'm just going to head there. But when you can't see more than 30 or 40 yards, then you can't see any sort of markers, and it leads to this constantly checking the phone. And you get off 10 minutes and you get off course. In 10 minutes you can walk a long way, and you can be really far off course, so you have to constantly check. But the I would say the the real surprise, and anyone who's been hiking in the mountains knows that weather changes quickly, but I don't think I've ever seen it change as quickly as it did. And it may have had something to do with we were there in the shoulder season between winter and spring. But I mean, you would be a perfectly beautiful day, and then all of a sudden you'd see this mist start to roll in. Next thing you know, it's a torrential downpour, and then it would stop, and it would go back and forth, and it was like you couldn't figure out what to wear because as soon as you put your rain gear on, it stops raining, and then you take it off and it rains again. And so that was a little different. That was a little different.
That's true. Brad, tell me about some of the other aspects of the trail that you were just not expected, and what would you have done differently, if you had to do it all over again? And also eventually, I was curious if you guys want to do another segment over. You're like, okay, that was great, that was spectacular, that was fun, but never again.
uh,
Well, the last day was a humdinger.
yeah, I was just gonna, that was gonna be, yeah. So the last day, Sammy, you can talk about do we want to do it again? Um, so yeah, the last day we were, so context, right? We had been rained on for 3 days. We get into camp Thursday or day four. Um, Finally getting a break in the weather. We break out the stoves. We're having hot food again. We're feeling, hey, it's good. Um, the next day, the mileage was only 8.5 miles. So we're like, it's 8.5 miles and it's all downhill. This is going to be, we're just going to cruise on down to the Cathedral Park Hotel. We'll be there in 4 or 5 hours. We're going to be in a hot shower before you know it. Fantastic. The next morning, we weren't even rushing for breakfast. We're having our third cup of coffee, having our eggs. I mean, we were feeling great, like top of the world. We had conquered this crazy thing. Well, we we, we start about, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning actually hiking, and it ends up taking us 12, no, 10 10 hours to get to the bottom. 10 hours to go 8 miles. Um, and I think it took us 2 hours, 2 or 3 hours to go the first mile. And it was so there's as you may it was you did the whole trek. Did you come down to Cathedral Peak Hotel? Did you take a side thing, or did you kept going?
No, so I just remembered, babe, because when I went there, I went with one guy who was like 65 at the time and another woman who's like in her early 20s. And the woman in the 20s, she got injured. And we did have to go down. And I think it was Cathedral. It's been a while. But I remember we had to go down. And it is a motherfucker. I mean, that thing just going down, 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 down. And it's brutal. Yeah. And of course, we dropped her off down there and then we had to climb up, 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 up again. But yeah, but it is beautiful along the way. That's for sure. But
it's beautiful.
So then why was it taking, just because it was so slippery? That's why you're going about 1 mile per hour?
Well, so for most of it, there wasn't a trail, really. There was a few cairns, maybe a skinny thing. So there's two ways of getting down. One is called the Bell's Traverse, which we didn't do because we had seen pictures, talked to people. We were warned that there's two sketchy sections, and sketchy means it's kind of on a rock face with about a foot wide path, but there's nothing below you, nothing to catch you at all. So, and there's no ropes. Um, so there was just some concern like, hey, given there's an alternate, let's not do that because it's a risk we can manage. So we did not do that one. That's, I think, called the normal route that most people do. I think it's a little more marked or whatever. What we did is essentially we just went down the ravine between the cliffs of the mountain. So we were following a drainage the whole way, which is a river. So the trail would go to the left of the river, to the right of the river, through the river. You'd be like climbing up rocks to get to the top of the bank, then so you could catch a thing because you're isn't in a gully. Um, and you're going over a lot of rocks. There were sections that was probably 12 to 18 inches wide, and then it would go down, but it was grass. We had one of the team tumbled, I don't know, a mile into it, kind of got bumped on the head. Everything was okay. But that kind of like woke everybody up like, hey, let's,
Yeah.
you gotta be careful here. So it was just but it was beautiful. That was the prettiest 10 hours. I mean, the views of this thing starting at 10,000 feet, going through like the whole way down was just amazing. The wildflowers were just starting to bloom. So it was beautiful, but it was, I tell you, people weren't talking much. By the time we got to 5, 6 o'clock, we were just like, get me the heck back to the hotel.
Yeah.
And how was the hotel, Sam?
The hotel is fantastic. It really was. We got hooked up with the suites. Everyone had their own little like lodge, little cabin,
Oh, wow.
and it's a great little hotel with a terrific buffet.
Okay, Dave, well, I'm sure you need that. And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to wanderlearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.